Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. We're taking a quick look here, of course, at Bitcoin and some altcoins today, seeing what opportunities are present and if we should consider longs versus shorts, and obviously help make your day just a little bit better. Do me a favor, hit the like button, maybe even comment below. Let me know your thoughts on Bitcoin here. And what we're going to do is talk a little bit about kind of just the way that the macro structure's forming here. We do have that $72,000 liquidation range that was swept yesterday. The price pulled back, got a nice little short position in there, considering another short here moving forward as well. I'll explain more so what I mean by that and why, but we're range bound right now, folks. So simple way to understand it, 71.5 is the upper range and roughly 68K is the lower range. That's kind of where we're at for the moment. So until that trend changes or discontinues, we want to presume it's going to continue. All right. Now there's some important stuff we're going to look at here today, specifically the 3-day liquidation and a pretty significant amount of liquidation below the price. Obviously the macro structure is something to talk about. Sure, you see this a lot on social media right now, talking about how, 90 to 100,000 is going to be next because it's just the only thing left for macro liquidation. Well, that's true in the long term. I think short term, we're not going to see that right away. And I'll explain more so what that, what that looks like and why I feel that way. So be sure to stick around. We got a good one today. Let's take a look. All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started off with some backend data first, just kind of give us some foundational understanding of kind of where we're at here. I always like to start with the order blocks just to give us perspective on, kind of if there's any heavy specific areas here. And if we zoom out, 74,000 is kind of like a larger chunk, but it's really not that much in comparison, and 65K as well. So we're kind of smack dab in the middle of that large range. So besides those order blocks there, we're pretty much just seeing high volume in this this compressed range between 70 and 72,000 is a close approximate, right? So that kind of doesn't tell us too much, unfortunately, but sometimes you can find some outliers there. There's not a lot of outliers either here. I mean, we do see some gaming coins and PayFi coins doing well in this, separate sectors here. We're not seeing a ton of market dominance coming into Bitcoin or ETH specifically. We'll look at that here in a minute, but let's double check liquidation here. This is 24-hour liquidation, just to give you some perspective. We could very well see a push up to 72,000. It would make sense. That's the current range that we're in. Generally speaking, there's more liquidation on the upside, so we're seeing more shorts starting to pile in, which I kind of side with in a way, just based on that macro liquidation being above the price. I think we will see a push to the upside, but not right away, okay? And more so specifically here, we're looking at the 7-day. That's also a $72,000 accumulation there. And the 30-day, of course, kind of is a bit spread out here, right? We do have some higher liquidation close by. Anyways, this long story short there is that there's liquidation on both ends. And let's go ahead and actually take a look at this here. Let's go to refresh here too, so we can kind of see what the current scenario is. And what I like to look at here is essentially just larger and lower time frame liquidation. So you're probably seeing the buzz right now online about 72 to 80K being a distinct probability. Truth is there is some liquidation there, of course. Obviously, there's some good chunks between 80 and 85K, right? But for the most part, the local liquidation here has been hit with that wick up yesterday to 72.5. So we saw a good $10 billion get hit with that quick little spike, and the price pulled back down. Was able to kind of finish my short position that way, right? But liquidation hunts aside, when we look at the last 7 days here, that's what this number is here in the middle, there's more liquidation on the upside. So there's no doubt that a push to further higher would seem probable in the near future, okay? So I'm not trying to convince you to short, nor am I telling you to take a long right now. We're kind of in this range-bound scenario, so until the range changes, really you just kind of short the top and long the bottom. That's kind of the concept. But between now and then, this is what I'm a little more focused on, just because this weekend liquidation that hasn't been hit yet. And oftentimes weekend longs or shorts do tend to get hit immediately or quicker than the macro. So just know 68.3 down as low as about 66.7K is that area of liquidation below the price. All right. So that's more immediate, therefore potentially more likely. All that said, when we look at open interest, 71.3, easy number, 71.5K is that local resistance range. That's right there where we see the local highs, okay? Outside of the candle wick from yesterday, that's essentially the local high for us. That's the local high range, okay? Or lower time frame high. All that said, liquidation delta is at about 5 billion in the green, so that's generally favorable for the bulls. So lower time frames, we're seeing this good push to the upside. It would seem sensible to presume the price goes up to 71.5, maybe 71,000, and maybe starts to pull back. Pay attention to volume. If the volume remains high or stays high rather, then you're more likely to see the price continue upwards. But ideally, as the candlesticks go up and the volume starts to go down, that's when you start to see weakness, and that usually is somewhat of a trap. All right, so that's kind of something to pay attention to. Now, here's something I want to kind of show you, just the macro here for us, to give you some perspective on the weekly time frames. I sent this chart out previously. It is pinned on my Twitter as well. Actually, I need to repin it actually, but I sent that a couple days ago on the 1st, or a few days ago rather. And the whole point of me bringing this up is just to give you some perspective on the weekly time frame. So this is important to understand. The previous range highs and lows is kind of this green box, okay? Now, it's not like a perfect scenario here where we're just going to stay in this zone here, but now that we've broken into it, until we reclaim 71,000 or higher on the macro, so to speak here, in other words, a weekly closure above 71K would probably be the best thing to identify, because that would put us in a position where we've broken our previous range, right? Now, it's not to say we're going to be stuck in here because it was a previous range. It's just that now that we're here, we can presume that this previous low of 71.5K should be the new high, all right? At least until that discontinues. So just something to be mindful of. Keep in mind that range is as low as 50, roughly, I'm just going to round up and say 55,000 to 71,000. That's kind of the current range here for us. My presumption is that we're going to range in this area until it's broken, all right? So if we can get a pretty good week or two under our belt here of 71,000 or higher, then that narrative will change. Between now and then, 71K is the resistance. Looking at the, this is the 1 hour time frame. Gives us perspective here that our point of control is at about 71.5 is a rough estimate there. This is that upper range. I'm expecting rejection there and potential support here at 68. So that's kind of the concept on the hourly. We're right here kind of traveling just barely above the cloud, maintaining above it. That is helpful in a slightly bullish scenario, but when you test this range here, generally speaking, you want for it to definitively remain above or below before you consider a trade. We are over the hourly RSI, which is positive. 4 hours trying to break, but hasn't yet. Money flow index is increasing, which is generally construed as positive, but daily time frame is still lackluster. So once more, it takes a good handful of lower time frame convergences to shift that bullish dynamic, which we're a long ways away from. So even a closure above 71K, I wouldn't say would be like a monumentally bullish scenario on the daily. It's going to need to translate to a weekly. So we want to see at least, 7 days closures above 71K to get that firm indication. And I know most people are probably rolling their eyes if they hear that, because I'm sure Tom, Dick, and Harry on social media right now is telling you to buy all these dips, but they've been telling you to buy the dip every time it comes down. So they're always going to be right, because at some point the price will go up. All right. So between now and then, the important thing is to understand lower time frame convergences. Yes, they are present, but they're not super substantial just yet. We need more time in this range here, or above this range rather, to essentially give us, poise to go higher. All right. So those are my thoughts. What are yours? Please comment below. Help the algorithm too. Don't forget to like the videos, maybe enable alerts so you can be abreast on these updates. And obviously, I appreciate you very much and wholeheartedly. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for your patience. I took 10 days off here recently. I haven't done that in a long time, to travel to Mexico with my family. Just so you know, it wasn't a true vacation because I was watching my son full time because my wife was working. So it was an interesting dynamic. Obviously, I enjoyed it, don't get me wrong, but it was exhausting to say the least. Quick heads up to our traders. We got a 15% discount on trading fees if you use my link to register through Bitunix. Links down below in the description. All right, folks, take a quick look here at Ethereum just to quickly summarize kind of where we're at here. Usually I like to look at the side-by-side comparison versus Bitcoin, just to give us some perspective on the current ranges and if there's any benefit of taking along with this coin. First of all, the easy way to understand it is that both resistance ranges are holding so far at this point. In other words, even though Ethereum is effectively 2x of Bitcoin for the moment, we're seeing 2130 as that potential resistance level, just as Bitcoin has 71,500 for its local resistance. So keep in mind, there's a good chance that unless we break this range here for Ethereum, that we could see somewhat of a pullback. Let's double check the back end, see if there's anything else that's telling here. We do see 2180 and once more 2130 as those two areas of resistance based on open interest. Liquidation delta is approaching 6 billion here. Basically, once again, 2x of Bitcoin in a lot of ways, at least on its own regard, as far as how much delta we're seeing versus Bitcoin. And if we look at liquidation too, we can actually kind of get just a little bit better in our understanding here. We can see the next area of liquidation is 2250 to 2300. So hypothetically, we could see a continuation of that level, but that is the 1 month. Let's go with just a slightly lower time frame. Just like we did with Bitcoin, let's look at the 3-day and kind of understand where we're at here. So there is a lot of liquidation liquidation below about 1970 to 2000, and then above respectively at 2160. So we're seeing confluence at 2160. That is potentially the next leg up for Ethereum, or possibly a good consideration for a short if we break this range. Now, obviously, it depends on what kind of trader you are. I'm not saying you're going to try to short from 2160 to 500, right? Obviously, you got to be logical in how you secure profits. But for the most part, we're seeing some bullish type of convergences here on Ethereum. It's just hard to trust based on Bitcoin kind of being lower volume with this pump, leading into a resistance. You generally want to wait for that resistance to be broken first. Daily time frame is abysmal for Ethereum. All altcoins are going to exude the same behavior until we reclaim the 20-day SMA. I would say probably not worthwhile considering along. We are seeing the local point of control at 2100 as a round number become that new support potential. Also, overextension here with a 9 on TDS does tell us that a short-term continuation higher would make more sense. All right, specifically just based on if Bitcoin were to progress towards 72,000, which I think is still a distinct probability. So overall, short-term bullish on Ethereum here, just based on maintaining above our points of control and just kind of in the range here of with some nice volume here overall, mostly based on liquidation delta, but for the most part, I'm still leaning more towards Bitcoin pulling back on the short term, so I'm apprehensive to recommend a long just yet, even though these are a lot of things I like to look for when I consider a long position. Specifically maintaining above the cloud and all lower time frame moving averages, excluding the 200, we're in pretty good shape here overall. So if Bitcoin can maintain above 70,000 today, I think Ethereum will probably continue to progress higher. It just seems to be more sensible there. So be more careful taking a short in this coin, even though it's definitely right for the taking. I would say that it's a little bit more on the risky side. So less is more at this point until we have a definitive break above or below certain ranges here. We want to presume this bearish divergence on the macro will continue. That's kind of the concept. All right, those are my thoughts on ETH. What are yours? Comment below. All right, folks, quick look at Solana. Let's go ahead and start off with the side-by-side comparison here with Bitcoin and kind of recognize a few obvious outliers here. First of all, Solana has a pretty significant resistance at 89,000. Oh my God, 89,000, that would be nice. $89. Bitcoin, effectively, its resistance is 71.5K, 71,500. So that kind of just lets us know that both are performing very synonymous in certain ways. In other words, both rejecting in essence, closer to their local resistances, but also the inverse pairing we're seeing here, this is actually very poor for Solana. Bitcoin is establishing higher lows and Solana is establishing lower lows, right? So you could argue this is like a bullish type of pattern, right? When we have a descending type of channel before the breakout, that is true, but it shows weakness, general weakness when compared to Bitcoin. So oftentimes you don't really want to try to trade those kind of coins because once more, that's kind of just a somewhat of a weak pattern, right? Hypothetically, a short at $89 makes sense to me, just looking at this and how Bitcoin is likely to reject at 71.5 if we get there. Those are just things that I kind of like to look for. Once more, it's never perfect. Obviously, everyone has different trading styles, but for me, looking at that and then, of course, verifying open interest at $90 and also 88 kind of reinforces that resistance here. Okay, granted, this is just the last 7 days. It's not a macro or it's certainly not the macro structure. Once more, 97 is a different story. We'll talk about that later, but being under 100 for Solana, we're probably going to maintain that sub 100 level for some time, just like Bitcoin's probably going to maintain sub 72,000 for some time until we can break that macro structure range. All that said, liquidation delta is pretty close to break even. Not really a very fruitful scenario there. I don't necessarily look for positions based on a break even. Oftentimes a significant transition makes sense, which we are seeing here. So it would make more sense to consider shorting Solana too. Once more, lower volume breeds difficult trading conditions, at least difficult to want to take a trade into that resistance. $90 is that upper area of liquidation. We could see a quick sweep to 90 and then back down again, which we saw yesterday at like 72.5K for Bitcoin. Called that out. Once more, that's all available on my social media if you're not familiar. Make sure you check that out. Okay. Now, when it comes to Solana, macro structure here, let's go ahead and take a look first. It's going to be pretty poor. It's going to be synonymous with a lot of other coins, actually worse. Let me explain here too, because most coins kind of bottomed out when they hit that local overextension, and unfortunately Solana continued to progress lower. So all that said, it doesn't mean that it can't still go higher. It's actually due to recover because of that massive overextension, but the likelihood of recovery is kind of on the naive side, if you will, to understand, or to think that we're just going to catapult up because we went so far down. That's a very it's a very dim-witted perspective. Oftentimes you'll see that on social media with people just keep talking about buying every single dip, and they're the dips themselves that are making money off your backs because they're just shilling coins consistently. Alex Becker, I forget the other gentleman, he was in our Discord here. Somebody mentioned him as well. Is it oh no, hold on here. Stupid thumbnails. That's the one. Does anybody know this guy? Call him out if you do. He looks familiar. I forget his name. But anyways, he's another one of those guys that's going to consistently tell you to buy every dip. Anyways, no shit on these people. I'm not trying to talk down about them. I'm just saying that in general, you want to be careful just buying a dip because it's a dip. You want to do your due diligence, and obviously spot bags are different stories. Now, Solana daily time frame, there's no other way around it. It's truly bearish. But the truth is, it's been overextended. The likelihood of recovery, a slight relief rally makes sense too. We just have to get past this local range here. So what I generally like to look for is a closure above a specific local resistance. So if we can maintain above, just say $88 today, 89 is a better number to focus on. If we maintain $89 or higher, Bitcoin doesn't surpass 70,000 to the downside, I think Solana is probably more likely to progress higher. We can see Solana's up 1.5% versus Bitcoin 0.25%. That does show some strength, but once more, it's lower time frame strength, which isn't super substantial right now because the macro structure lately has been pretty much just calling the shots. So those are kind of my thoughts. I know it's like, man, not what you want to hear, and that's just how I'm always going to do it. So just trust me on this one here, folks. I've seen a lot of manipulative situations here, and I think shorting at resistance makes a lot more sense, even if you are like, your mindset is bullish, or you want to convince yourself that everything's going to go up because it came down so far. That's true, but I think that the rally from 60 to 70K last week is probably all we're going to see for rallies. We're going to see suppression in this current range for Bitcoin, and it's going to filter into altcoins until altcoin dominance starts to increase. We see market capitalization increasing. We pass that $1 trillion altcoin market cap scenario. I think most alts are going to be just bleeding out here moving forward, or more so suppressing themselves within a range to the sideways, to the side, right? So anyways, those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours. Why don't you comment below if you're a Solana enthusiast, or just, it's one of your favorite coins to trade. I enjoy trading it, certainly. But as of late, having missed the short bus here, so to speak, I'm not really leaning towards taking a long just yet. I think it's very premature to consider that. All right, let's take a look at another one. Quick heads up to our traders. We got a 15% discount on trading fees if you use my link to register through Bitunix. Links down below in the description. All right, folks, quick look here at SUI is kind of see what's going on here. This coin is not looking so great. Keep in mind these type of patterns here with descending channels can oftentimes flag out and essentially go the opposite direction. So just want to kind of bring this to your attention here, side by side with Bitcoin, not looking super strong. Obviously, it's establishing lower highs and lower lows. Doesn't give me a ton of confidence in taking a trade. Now, some would argue this is a bullish flag pattern, which is true, but patterns only exist, they only have validation. They're only validated if the trend itself is also moving the same direction. Now, the overall trend right now is down, right? So for you to think this is a bullish flag pattern is kind of a naive consideration. Once more, this is your favorite coin. I don't really care if it is or not. I don't mean any offense, but you shouldn't have emotions or feel emotional about me dissing on your favorite coin. And I'm not doing that. Trust me. I trade SUI a lot, but for the most part, it's just not looking great. However, here are some highlights, obviously, just to keep in mind. 93 cents is that heavy area of confluence below the price. We got a lot of open interest there, reinforcing support, but also potential to see that price pull back to that level. Liquidation delta is probably about the same. It's probably getting closer to break even, which is tapering off, is at 50 million versus 150. So that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be shooting straight up, but it does tell us we have slight amount more interest in longs versus shorts in this coin. And if we look at liquidation, 91 cents is that lower range, a little bit closer than that 104 scenario there. So in the last 7 days, there's a lot more liquidation on the upside. Totally, I get it. There's a great chance we actually see that level, but it's going to require Bitcoin to break 71,000, and that's like a super strong resistance right now. So just be aware that taking along right now, it is essentially the odds are stacked against you, even though honestly the return on investment is higher, right? You'd probably find more profit to the upside because those targets are much further away. 4-hour time frame does reflect $1 as that point of control here locally. So just kind of maintain, or just to understand here, there's a pretty significant little resistance range here. So I'll just go ahead and put this on the charts for us for later, so you can kind of remind yourself that, hey, this is not something you want to try to long into, right? Hypothetically, a quick trade, maybe different story. But when it comes to the overall scenario here, I'm not super convinced that we're going to go higher here moving forward. Daily time frame, as per usual with most coins, is looking pretty bad. Very similar in a lot of ways with Bitcoin and Solana. Only coin I would say that looks better than most is Ethereum as far as the macro structure, and it's still pretty poor. All right, 4-hour time frame, not much to really note here. We are maintaining below 50 in the RSI, while money flow index is higher. That simply is higher because it's including, a few candles from before when we had some bullish convergence over, on Friday, right? So when things pumped on Friday, SUI did too. But once more, we're seeing that $1 resistance with a secondary resistance at about, primary at $1 and then secondary at about 102. So just until we break above $1, I would say it's safe to presume that SUI will go down and move synonymous in a lot of ways with Bitcoin, or in this case, 2x to the downside and only 1x to the upside. This is not a good pairing, not something you want to look for when taking a trade on a coin, regardless of how much you love or hate the coin itself. And when I say hate, I'm referring to revenge trading. You should never do that. If you're considering taking a trade right away, consider taking a walk first, cool your head, cool your jets, whatever it is, and make sure you feel better, right? Sound body, sound mind, better trader. Okay, anyways, those are my thoughts here today. Hope you have a good one. Thanks so much for watching, and deeply, deeply appreciate all those who consistently support me. Make sure you join us over on Twitter, Telegram, and Discord. We got a lot of new members coming over. I communicate on there quite frequently now, but it's more specifically like very relevant things that you need to kind of understand that are specific to the current situation. So I'm not just shilling a bunch of crap. It's pretty consistent, and it's all there for you. So check it out. I look forward to working with you. Have a good rest of your day. See you in the next one.